All right, we're going to start Unit 8, which is very close to the end of the Computer Science A curriculum. It's all about two-dimensional arrays, which are super important just in general in their own right, but they're super important on the AP exam. In fact, I can almost guarantee to you that there will be a question about two-dimensional arrays in the free response portion. So we are going to, before we actually, talk about what they are and how to create them, we're going to talk about kind of the reason for or where they can come from in the first place. So we're going to start with an example here, just a general example, and kind of build off it. So here's the example. So let's say we got a class of students here, and we're trying to collect all their grades. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some integer arrays here, some integer arrays of their grades. So I got student one, and what he has, or she has in their grades is a 91 and a 84 and a 72 and a 55. I don't know why I picked those. Those are probably a bad set, but that's okay. And then I got another student here, new integer array. This is student 2. And let's see. So they're going to get, I don't know, 100 and 54 and an 81 and a 73. Okay, I put parentheses, darn. All right, and I'm going to add one more student. And that's going to be, oh man, I'm really struggling. This is going to be student 3, a new integer array, student 3. And what they have are a set of values. So this person is getting a 78 and a 94 and an 81 and a 76. All right, that seems good. Okay, so here's the issue. So let's say that I wanted to create a program here where I wanted to be able to just kind of scroll through all the tests that I've assigned so far this year and look at all their grades. And the issue is that I could write a for loop that goes through one of these, and I could write a different for loop that goes through a second one, and I could go write a for loop that looks at the third one. But how do I do this in such a way that I get to actually look through? I just want to scroll through all of them all at once. And the answer is that I can actually combine these 3 different integer arrays into one single array. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a new array, and what this array is going to hold is integer arrays. And we're going to see where that kind of takes us. So here's what it's going to look like. So whenever we declare a new integer array, what we're really doing is we're saying, hey, I have this variable or not a variable, but I'm going to store some integers, and I'm going to store them in array form. That's what these brackets are telling me. I'm going to store a bunch of integers in array form. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to store some integer arrays. That's what this is right now, integer arrays. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to store them in array form. And so I kind of have to take this one portion at a time. I have integer arrays that I'm storing in an array. And so what I can do is I can say this is my entire, I guess I can't just call this class 1, class 1 of students. And what I can do is I can say, hey, I am going to create, just like I did before, a new array using my braces. And what I'm going to store in there would be student 1. And I'm also going to put student 2 in there. And I'm also going to put student 3 in there. And so what I'm really creating here is an array of arrays. And so the question is, of course, how do I get to these items that are inside? Like, what does this mean? So what I can do here, if I actually want to get to their values, is, just take it one step at a time again. This integer array of arrays, if I get class 1 at, all right, let's say I want to get the first student, and I want to get their, third assessment. So the thing is that within this class, or rather within this integer array, what I've got here are 3 items, index 0, 1, and 2. I want to look at the first item. So class 1 at 0 gets me student 1, right? And it's kind of like our dot operator, where I'm going to continue to kind of work my way out, where if I want to get the third item, so index 2 from there, I can get item 2. So if I want to figure out what exactly that is, I can print that out, print line, this value, and what I should get is the value that is student 1, so index 0, and then the thing at index 2, which is 72. We could try that and print it out, see how this works. Let's see. So I want to, that's not what I want to do at all. I want to compile Java compile fun with two-dimensional arrays and Java fun with 2D arrays. Cool. 72. Perfect. Exactly what I wanted. So let's actually go back and make some changes here. Let's say that, I'm also going to let students exempt grades. So the first student is obviously going to, they can exempt grades that are less than 70, let's say. So I'm going to let them get rid of this grade and this grade. So the thing is I've now created an array of arrays where the first thing has 3 items, the next thing has 3 items, and the last one has 4 items, which is fine because what's actually going on here is that I am storing, well, how are these variables actually stored? They are memory addresses. And so what I'm storing here is a set of memory addresses to these different arrays. And I think actually probably the best thing I'm doing right now is to draw this out and show you what exactly is going on. So let me switch screens. I don't want this anymore. I want this. Okay. So let's look at what's actually going on here. What I've done is I initially created on the stack this variable class 1. It was an integer double array. I should have made this bigger. Let's just start over. All right. Big stack. All right, so first thing I have in here is my integer double array. And this is called class 1. And what it is, or what it's holding, is a memory address. And so it has some memory address. It's over here in the heap. And I get a chunk of space. And I'm going to actually do this in a different color. I get a chunk of space over here to store information in. And what I did was I stored 3 items in it. So item 1, item 2, and item 3. And so what I'm doing is I'm pointing over here. Now, what's actually contained inside of that array is another set of memory addresses. In this case, I have student 1, which equals a memory address again. And I have student 2, which equals a memory address. And then student 3, which equals a memory address. And so what they're doing is they are pointing at another array. So I've got 3 items in this one. I have 3 items in this one. And then this one I have 4 items in. And so those grades, 91 and 84 and 72, and I guess I didn't have to write these down because it doesn't really matter. But all these grades are stored over here. And so what I have are all these pointers, or these memory addresses, that are pointing to where the information is actually stored at. And so when I go to look at this then, and we'll reference this drawing a little bit, is the fact that, inside of class 1 is a memory address. And what's inside of each of those are 3 more memory addresses that are then pointing at my arrays that are stored in the heap. So, that is what is really going on behind the scenes when I have my double arrays. And the thing is, though, generally speaking, we will not create arrays, or double arrays rather, that are not what we call rectangular. So this is what's called a ragged array. And I have the first array that's in here has 3 items, the second one has 3 items, and the last one has 4 items. Generally speaking, what we're going to focus on are arrays that have the same number of items in each row. And you'll see why here in a second, because when I actually go to create one of these items, or rather one of these arrays, it's really easy to do. And so we'll tend to just kind of do things that way. And in fact, what I've been doing so far is kind of not how you would ever create a two-dimensional array. We do it very differently. And so let's actually go back and jump and see what that looks like. So I'm going to get rid of my drawing space if I can find my mouse. Goodbye. And back to computer science space. Perfect. Okay, so let's look at what's going on here. I'm going to do the same thing that I just did here. I'm going to get rid of this student's last grade. And And I'm going to just do it again. So let's make a new double integer, or sorry, two-dimensional integer array called class 2. And so just like I can create one-dimension arrays using my braces, I can do the same thing for two-dimensional arrays. And so here's what it looks like. I can use brace, and then within that, I'm going to have another brace for its value. So 91 and 70, no, 84, 84 and 72. And I can end that student, and then comma, and I can put the next one in. And so just like I created one-dimensional arrays, I can create two-dimensional arrays in the exact same way, where I'm just including all the elements that are actually going to be put into my two-dimensional array. And so I've got one more set. Here it is, 78 and 94 and 81. Perfect. Okay. Now, typically speaking, we won't see it kind of written this way. I feel like it's maybe hard to kind of see what's exactly going on here a lot of times. And I guess this is obviously just, the choice of the programmer. But a lot of times we will format them in this way so that they are kind of aligned nicely. And so now I can see this nice, this grid. So we've actually done something like this before whenever we were printing items out. But here it is again, where I can see these rows and these columns. These rows and these columns. So each item, and the way we typically think about this, and the way that I drew it out initially, is what is, considered going by our rows here. So each of these sets of items is in row order is what we call it. Now, the thing is, you could very easily visualize this going the other way, where each of these arrays is actually a column. It is just our standard to think about these in row order instead of column order. That being said, depending on what you're doing, you could choose whatever format you want. The reason, I would guess, that we typically do it this way is because this is the same way we do matrices in mathematics, right? I talk about how many rows I have. I have 3 rows, in this case 3 columns as well. So that's kind of the idea. So how can I create these? Now, one more way, get rid of this. One more way of doing this would be I can create a new two-dimensional array in the same way that I can create kind of a one-dimensional array without putting items inside of it. So if I want to make a third class, what I can do, that's class 2 again, is that I can set it equal to new. So set aside my part in the heap, and then integer, and then I'm going to give it a double array in this case. Two-dimensional array, and I put 3 items in 3 rows and 3 columns. So this is why we tend to focus on rectangular two-dimensional arrays, is because we can't specify in this situation that, okay, I want the first row to have 6 items and the second one to have 8 and the third one to have 9 and so on. Like I can only make rectangular, in this case square, two-dimensional arrays to work with. So this is how I declare and initialize two-dimensional arrays. If I want to actually get an item, we've already seen it. I already showed you one when I system.out.print. System.out.print line. I can print an item. So in this case, if I want to get the last item in this row, I can do that by saying I want class 2 item. So I want row 2. So that would mean index 1. And then I want the last item in there. So the third item, which would mean index 2. That's how I get it. And then on top of that, just like we do with one-dimensional arrays, I can assign these values in the same way. If I want to change that same item to something else, so in this case, the same item, I can set it to be equal to, I want to change that, what was this, the 73 to I'll give them 5 points, to a 78. Okay, so a lot of the things are obviously the same between our one-dimensional or two-dimensional arrays as far as how we create them and change different values. It's just now we're thinking of these as arrays of arrays. And so the really interesting that we'll get to, of course, is how do we traverse through them. But that'll be in the next one. So right now, what we're focused on is how we're going to create these two-dimensional arrays, which are just arrays of arrays. We can do it, kind of in our initial way of setting each item individually, or we can set aside memory locations in the heap, just like we did with one-dimensional arrays, where they will get placeholder values. So in this case, with an integer double array, they will just all get zeros. And I can change them or call upon them in the same way they did before. So that's our basics of two-dimensional arrays. And then next thing that we're going to need to do is, of course, talk about traversing.